Hey guys, I am Colleen and I'm a person. I like to read and I like to write, but I do whatever on this channel. Today, again, I was supposed to film something else. I was supposed to film a thrift haul, but I haven't quite gathered everything that I wanted according to like the Pinterest pegs that I had. I still wanted to film something for this week. Some of the things that I said I would read, I'm finally following through on that. I have read a few books off of my TBR, so let's get into it. The first one is the one with a kiss scam by Cindy Steele. I think I've mentioned before that I read one of her books already, her Christmas book, Faking Christmas. And pros first. Character chemistry was off the charts. I really liked Duke and Nora as a couple. The writing of their chemistry as a couple, I really liked it. The story starts off really strong and makes you feel so many feelings. A lot of the female MC Nora's experiences really scarily mirrored real life. Spoilers, by the way. There was a part where they meet again after some time, and all of her inner thoughts about how far in opposite directions both of them walked in that time that they spent apart, and my heart was breaking for her at that particular scene. And a lot of her struggles I think a lot of people can sympathize with, which I loved. For the male MC, Duke, I thought he was a really green flag male MC because, let me cite an example. Again, spoilers. There was this scene where she found herself in a situation where she would have to catch a ride with him, and he gave her so many options just to make sure that she was comfortable and she didn't find him creepy in any way. And I liked that about him. Even after they met after some time, he was very gentlemanly. Another pro that I have for this is that I laughed so hard reading this. The female MC struggled a bit. I loved that she could find humor in some of the things that she was experiencing, even though they were hard. And that made me feel a little bit lighter about the situation as well, which I loved. So cons for this book, I was just complaining about this in the last video. It's a Cinderella trope, which, it was Cinderella trope to a T. I found a way to still like it, but when I started sensing that it was a Cinderella trope, I was a bit iffy about it. The second con that I have for this is the structure. The second half of the book is super rushed, 5 times the speed of the first half of the book. The events that occurred after their initial meeting, everything felt a bit rushed and increasingly got even more rushed towards the end, the last 20%. And I felt in the rush to finish the book, some parts were glossed over and some parts were haphazard. Another con that I have for this is there are some throwaway characters, which sometimes can be unavoidable, but I just wished that every character had a deeper purpose, or at least a meaningful purpose in the moving of the story, rather than characters that just pop up and disappear after saying one or two lines. Another con that I have, it's not really a con, it's something that I just wished for this book. A time-skipped epilogue would have made this book. The female MC, of course, as I said, she was struggling a bit, so naturally she had these ideas of what her future could look like. I mean, a wish for the future. And since the ending of the story was a bit rushed, I felt like she didn't really get much of that wish, or we didn't really see it. If that makes sense. she was wishing for like a family and children and stability, and I think a time skip epilogue would have made it, rather than the ending that it was given, which was, yeah, as I said, a bit rushed. Like she gets an influx of financial assistance from Prince Charming. A lot of what happened in the ending felt a little too convenient. It's like the female MC didn't really grow much. She just was rescued. I couldn't really see the growth, like skill-wise or as an individual. I felt like the female MC didn't really grow. But overall, I still enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know, despite all those things, I still enjoyed it. And yeah, give it a read. I gave it 3 stars out of... No, I gave it 4 stars out of 5. The second book that I read is Caught Up by Liz Tomford, also off of my TBR. As I said in a previous video, I read The Right Move of the same sports series by Liz Tomford, and this is Miller and Kai's story, and it's a sports romance. What I really liked about it is the main characters were really fleshed out characters. They had flaws, they had goals as individuals. Their personalities were really clear and distinct. Another pro that I have is their very cute friend group. These are characters that are seen in other books of the series. They were involved in some capacity, and you can see them in their book, in Kai and Miller's book, and I really like that because even though they would just like pop in for humor to showcase that friendly dynamic, I really liked it because I like those kinds of like Easter eggs where you can spot other books as characters in another book, if that makes sense. But yeah, another pro that I have for this is the female MC, Miller. I thought that she was the best. She was witty, she was sharp, quick-witted, and all that, but she was also soft and approachable, if that makes sense. The author found a way to marry these two somehow contrasting personalities in one person, and I really like that about Miller. Another pro that I have for this book is that it is an interesting take on challenging family dynamics. I don't want to give too much away. I really like how that was written in. Cons that I have for this book is that it was long. It did not need to be that long, and it also felt long. Some of these slow burn romances find a way to seem fast-paced. You don't notice you're already like reading 600 pages or 800 pages or whatever. A lot of the exciting things, which you usually find in sports romances, I felt got a bit diluted because the main characters had a lot of introspective musings. At first it was welcome, but after a while it got a bit repetitive. I gave this book 3 stars. I mean, it was okay. I may check out the other books in the series just because it's a bit of a tie for me. The Right Move I really liked The Right Move, and then I wasn't too keen on this one. So I might read another of this series just to break that tie. The next one I've had in my TBR for a while. This is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams, who wrote The Cheat Sheet, one of my all-time favorites. And this is Will and Annie's book. I don't know if I discussed When in Rome before, but it's about a pop star and a pie shop owner. The pop star falls in love with him while she is on a break. And this book, Practice Makes Perfect, is about the pop star's bodyguard and the pie shop owner's sister. Did that make sense? Did that not make sense? I'm gonna do cons first. This is gonna kill me to say about this book because I really like Sarah Adams, and generally her writing style I really like, but yeah, this was a bit of a miss for me. I couldn't really connect with the characters for some reason. I felt like they were 2D characters and didn't have much depth. The next con that I have for this book is that the attraction, the romance aspect felt so one note, because the story, right, starts off with the two characters already very much liking each other. I felt like the story had to hold that level of intensity throughout the whole book because there was no build-up. It starts off at the peak of the attraction and then sort of had to maintain that throughout, and it got a bit stale and repetitive for me, in my opinion. As you know, Sarah Adams is a closed-door romance author, but in recent releases, she has been moving toward slightly ajar romances, and which I can appreciate. As you know, I love the cheat sheet, and that was closed door, but for a slightly ajar type romance, I felt like the intimacy was a bit glossed over. I mean, for the type of characters that they were and the level of intensity, like it seemed like they couldn't keep their hands off each other. I felt like the resulting scene of intimacy was a bit glossed over and hurried, and yeah, it didn't really give justice to their level of feelings. Another con that I have for this is that it became repetitively preachy in the last 10% of the book. There were like profound realizations, preachy talks with loved ones, which is always present in some way towards the end of a book. But yeah, I felt like this was a bit much in that department, which it got a bit boring. Another con that I have for this is that there was barely any plot development. It's sort of related to the attraction. They started off really, really already attracted to each other, and they got together in the end. And there was nothing making waves, no severe conflict, no strong feelings whatsoever. I mean, in the reader's part, nothing really excites you about this book. Pros. I didn't say pros first because I only have like 2 of these, and even these 2, I just felt like I had to write something. I was really at a loss. The first one is that the small town dynamic was pretty funny. There were a lot of nosy neighbors who are trying to get in their business. Sometimes it was cringe, sometimes it was funny, but yeah, let's go with funny for now. Another pro is that the dialogue wasn't that bad. It wasn't that stilted. Nothing really amazing or groundbreaking or extraordinary, but yeah, it was okay. What did I give this book? I gave this book 3 stars. Low 3 stars. When I tell you I almost gave it 2 stars, I think that one of the stars was just out of love for Sarah Adams. I finished it, I guess. The last book that I read, let's buckle up, because oh my god, was I not impressed. A lot of the books that I loved, I didn't love their sequels, and this was no different. The second installation for the Ruinous Love trilogy by Bryn Weaver came out. The first book was called Butcher and Blackbird, which, if you've watched any of my previous videos, I love this and I've been raving about it for so long. I put it in any like list recommendations, whatever, that I make. The second book just came out. It's called Leather and Lark. And I don't know if I just had extremely unrealistic expectations because I loved the first book so much, but it crashed for this book. This is Lachlan and Lark's story. Lark is Sloane, the first female MC, her best friend. She's a multiple deleter, as she describes. And Lachlan is an assassin for hire. It's a dark romance. The cons are pretty long again, so let's do that first. I'm sorry, I have to say it's not as good as book 1. So if you are expecting something that is as good as book 1, you will be disappointed. I felt like book 1, Butcher and Blackbird, was a bit more dark romance. It leaned more toward dark romance, and this book was not. Don't get me wrong, there were still like dark parts. There was still killing, obviously. There was still all the dark themes that were present in book 1, but sort of glossed over almost. I can't really explain it well. It felt really rushed, where the first book you could really, I don't want to say savor because it's a dark romance and it's very, very like a lot of gruesome stuff, but I felt like the first book was more exciting in that dark romance aspect. This one leaned more towards regular marriage of convenience trope. It was so light on the dark romance compared to the first book that I would have actually preferred that I be given a regular marriage of convenience book, because it was so bizarre how not dark romance it was. I can't help but compare the second book to the first book at every point that I have, because I really liked the first book, and this was it was a bit of a letdown. I felt like the first book was structured better than this book. In the first book, they were working towards something. There was a time crunch. It was exciting. And all the murders that were committed, all the gruesome events that happened, felt like they had a purpose that was building up to the final event. Whereas this book, I felt like Lark was talking to her great aunt or like auntie or elderly relative for the better part of the first half of the book. I felt like it could have been structured better. Another con that I have is that there were a lot of rundowns of things. I think this contributed to what I was saying before, that the murders didn't have the same like mystique and dark romance feel than book 1, because there were a lot of running down things like a list rather than showing the readers what happened. It was like, this happened and this happened, and after this happened and this happened. It wasn't really elaborated that much. Yeah, it was like grocery list type rundowns of things, of events. Another con that I have for this is that this is just like a personal pet peeve of mine. There was some Gen Z slang. It's not like I'm discriminating against Gen Z here. I have the same complaint for like millennial humor. I've read books where I'm telling you I cringed so much when I would read like terms like cool beans and stuff. And I'm afraid that this was not any different, but it was Gen Z slang. I just feel like in a few years, it would show the books' age, if that makes sense. It's almost like trend-like, how these types of things become popular, and they serve as, for me, a bit of a timestamp. So it ages your book. It doesn't make your book timeless, because in a few years, everyone's gonna clock that you were saying Gen Z 2024 stuff. Does that make sense? Is that irrational of me? I feel like it ages a book, pins it to 1 year, like year 2024. What about the people who will discover this book in like 10 years, where the slang is completely different and the manner of speaking is completely different?
Yeah. That was so long. That was such a long rant about it.
Another point that I have for this is that the chemistry between Lark and Lachlan was slow to progress. It was less sparks, more just coexistence. A lot of the first half, they were barely noticing each other. For this book, there were no formidable opponents for most of the book. The villain had a chapter, okay? So spoilers. The villain had a chapter, but it was just one chapter where he was like sort of lurking, and I would have loved if those chapters came in periodically just to sort of show that he was closing in on them while they remained unsuspecting. I felt like just one chapter was a bit ineffective, and he was barely mentioned until the final showdown, and even then when he was revealed, it was sort of glossed over. It wasn't really, I don't know, he was just sloppy. Even the personality, it wasn't as distinct as all the foes from the first book, and there was no mystery about it. I remember the first book having like a sort of the shocking moment where the real culprit was revealed. This was sort of out in the open type thing, and yeah, I would have loved a little more mystique. Okay, so another one that I have is sort of related to the it's not really dark romance. Lark and Lachlan, they didn't have distinct identities as predators. The recurring theme in this series is that they are predator hunters, if that makes sense. They kill killers, which I really loved about the first book because they had a sense of justice, even if it was a warped sense of justice. It's again a theme in this book, but the mains in this book didn't have the distinct identity of Sloane and Rowan as predators. For the majority of the book, you don't even see Lachlan displaying the skill set that he has. For Larch's part, a lot of her multiple deleter scenes, she was torturing predators that were already captured off page, and then most of the scenes of her engaging in that sort of activity, they're already hostages of hers. There was no hunt, there was no chase. They didn't seem like they were dangerous at all. The last con that I have is, as I said already, you can see the villain, who the villain is, from miles away. You don't have to guess. There was no surprise. One of the pros that I have for this book is a particular scene that I really loved. So spoilers, there is a scene where Lachlan gifts Lark one of the men from her old school that caused her a lot of trauma as a sort of a token of affection, so she could have that sort of closure. And I thought that was really, like, in a twisted way, that was really sweet of him. There is nothing better in dark romances than gifting your wife the man who caused all her trauma strapped to a chair. If anything, the joint murder that they committed was the very essence of dark romance. This next point that I have for the book is half pro, half con, because in the last 20% of the book, it picks up, but not to a level that would satisfy you. There was some excitement there, but the problem that I have for this, spoilers, is that the final battle was done in Lark's POV, where she was restricted in some manner. I don't want to really get into it, but yeah, she was not in a position where she could view the oncoming conflict. Basically, she was trapped and she couldn't really see much. And why was it done in her POV? Yeah, I felt like it glossed over the final battle, it being relayed from her point. My last pro for this is something that I've already touched on a while ago, is the Ruinous Love trilogy. I love that it's a bit different from the usual dark romance, because I really appreciate that dark romance to the author, this author, doesn't equal cruel MCs. A lot of the dark romances, the male MCs or sometimes female MCs are just straight up, whoever has the upper hand, are just straight up jerks. And I love that even though these characters are technically predators, they're sort of demon slayers. They're killers of killers. They have a, as I said, a warped sense of justice, but it's there, which I really liked. So those are all the books that I have read off of my TBR. I am still currently reading, and I am currently reading The Graham Effect by L. Kennedy. I'm still reading it. I haven't finished it yet, but I will let you know. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this encouraged you to read more books or check out these particular books. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good day. Like, comment, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!